We've told you how archaeologists have been searching Oak Lawn Cemetery and recovered bodies that might be victims of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. More testing is still needed first. Fox 23 investigative reporter Jana Clark, talked again with a former police officer who says he saw old photos that show another location where he thinks some bodies were buried. It's her Fox 23 investigation.
Is where the former Tulsa police officer thinks that bodies from the Tulsa Race Massacre could be buried. I'm just west of downtown Tulsa, and I talked to the former police officer before a couple of years ago. He told me he knew he was near the location then, but now that he's been able to see this area from above, he's convinced this is it. When we talked last time, I remember you said, I'm not sure we're in the right place. I feel like we're close. It's somewhere in this area. Do you feel positive about?
I'm sure it's right down here.
Former Tulsa police officer Robert Patty says back in the 1970s, he saw photos of bodies from the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. From what you remember of the photos, how many bodies total do you think?
I placed the number at 100.
Robert says his supervisor showed him photographs one night at the station and warned him not to tell.
He said, don't ever say a word about anything you saw in those pictures. He said, at least not as long as I'm alive. And we shook on it, and I never said a word to anybody as long as he was alive.
Why did he say that?
He thought that the city of Tulsa would be so mad and so upset and so troubled over those pictures being discovered that they might end my life and end his too for having been responsible for showing them to me.
Historians tell me they think in the days and weeks after the massacre, some police officers went to local businesses and confiscated photographs that showed terrible things that happened.
Pictures of people being butchered, being hung in their front yard, being pulled apart between automobiles. It was horrible. These were people that maybe went to the store and never came home. These were people that were running and got shot in the back. These were people that were asleep in their homes and got drug out of their bed and hung on their trellis.
When you first saw those photographs, what did you think?
Humans didn't do this. Animals did this. It's hard to grasp, and I'm a combat veteran. This was the devil dancing in the streets. This was absolutely no mercy, no conscience. It's haunted me for half a century.
Robert says another packet of photos showed a trench dug that he thinks was right here and piles of bodies. And tell me what you saw in those photos.
They were dumping bodies down the hill, and there was pictures of men pushing these bodies in wheelbarrows over the railroad tracks. They were also people shoveling quicklime into the ditch. They were dumping the bodies into and covering these bodies with quicklime. And the bodies had been wrapped in bed sheets and pillowcases and flour sacks.
This area is next to New Block Park, one of 3 locations named 2 decades ago by the state's Race Riot Commission. They reported several locations that should be searched for bodies. This area is near another spot I need to show you. A short 2.5-minute walk to the old 11th Street Bridge, where several people told me their family members had always said they saw bodies dumped off this bridge and into the river. The area Robert points out now is known as the Canes, a spot the current Mass Graves Committee says they want to explore. How much time do you think you spent thinking about this over the years?
I never stopped. I never stopped. Every one of them knew somebody. They had a daddy, they had a son, they had an uncle that worried about them and never knew what happened to them because they simply disappeared and were never heard from again. This needs to be done and done right, with a decent Christian burial. That's why I'm doing this.
Has it been difficult to carry this with you all these years?
It has troubled me, and there was many other things I could have been worrying about, but this is primary for me. I'll start the rest of my life when I'm sure this is resolved.
I asked Tulsa's police chief about these photographs. He told me he has looked for them and has not found them. He said, quote, "If there are photographs, I would certainly love to make them available." Near downtown Tulsa, covering news that matters. Jana Clark, Fox 23 News.